All right, the broadcast is live.
Good morning. It's Friday, and that means it's time for the Friday Grief Chat. We're glad to have you. I'm Jill.
I'm Deb, and no, that way.
Other way.
That way. There you go.
Yep.
That way, we are basically asking for any of our listeners to write in and say, what is on your heart? And Jill, if it's okay with you, I'd like to start. Is that okay?
Absolutely. I hope you do.
It's interesting when I'm like speaking on Sunday, doing the Sunday talk at church or sermon or lesson or whatever you call it. This Sunday's lesson is I have no words. I will gladly tell our listening audience that sometimes when I listen to someone, and be it in a grief coaching session or just something I see on Facebook that's on someone's heart, I get this moment of overwhelm where I have no words.
Yep.
And my heart is just like my breath is taken away. And sometimes the only thing I can write is, and maybe some of you have been the recipient of this, I have no words, only love for your hurting heart. I don't know what to say.
That's all you can say. And that's really what people need to hear.
I know, but it almost feels like, especially a grief coach needs more words. At the same time, I'm modeling for others the humanity of it all. Seeing Lahaina burn like that. And then several of my friends that live in Hawaii, I have no words.
There aren't any. And they know that. What's interesting is the Hawaiian culture has ways to bring their culture into it in a way that our culture doesn't. And to reach back to the ancestors and to look toward what can be done differently. But again, in terms of the grief, it is overwhelming, and there are no words.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can say to make it better. There's nothing you can say to normalize it, because it's not normal to have an entire community wiped out. Canada is facing that too right now. They had to evacuate an entire capital city because of fire. And in Australia a couple of years ago, when people had to literally, just like in Lahaina, jump into the ocean to get away from walls of fire coming at them when they were on holiday. There aren't any words for that kind of thing because it's not normal.
And sometimes there's no words when, I guess, on the Republican debate, how many of you believe there's climate change, or however they phrased it, and not a person raised their hand. Sometimes in families, there is such a different perspective, or within communities, it sort of blows my mind. I have no words.
There's no way to have a discussion if people are on opposite sides at this point, other than to say, we'll have to just disagree. But from my perspective, this is something that we've never seen before.
Right.
And we have weather patterns that don't make sense. You're in Illinois, and you are hotter by far than Southern California. And we're going back into heat next week, but you're still hotter than that. The heat indexes are beyond crazy. You are a hot lady. I'm telling you.
I just, sometimes I just, and as a person who's a talker, my mother used to say, if Deb's not talking, something is really wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The things that I am connected to Hawaii through a number of therapists there, through friends there, just like you have friends there. And the friends that I have, a lot of them are actually on Maui. And the stuff they are facing is they're also facing the survivor's guilt because Kihei
Yes.
is fine. And 10 miles away
Mm-hmm.
is Lahaina, and Kanapali is okay. And 2 miles away is Lahaina. It's like when we have fires here in California and things skip from house to
Mm-hmm.
house and 3 houses burn and 2 don't. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. I mean,
But it makes for a lot of guilt.
this, while it's not fire, when we have tornadoes and half the street is wiped out, the other half go, oh my goodness.
Right.
My good friends have nothing and I have all of this. And I sometimes wonder, I look at our living room and I look at, we have a 4-bedroom house and it's just Daryl and I go, okay, how many people can we genuinely split in? I felt like that when Ukraine was first, the Ukraine was first invaded. I'm like,
It's how do we help and how can we use our resources to help?
Yeah. Not everybody thinks like that. They don't want to invite people in. And, whether you invite them into your house or your heart, it's a risk.
Right.
It's a risk.
Which charity do you give to? How do you check out which ones are good and which ones aren't, other than by knowing someone on the ground in whatever community?
That's right.
Right. But we've had an incredible number of losses just in the last 12 months. And just here in the US, not to mention other places all around the world where the weather has caused massive loss of homes and livelihoods and lives and pets and lifestyle and futures, because when there's a flood, you don't know if you can go back.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly
or if it's going to happen again.
Right. On our street, if you go one way, first there's only one way in and out of our subdivision. Only one way.
That's not good.
It is what it is. We were built in the 60s.
Yep.
And so at the very end, like end of Heather Hills, there's a curve, but Heather Hills is on a slope, right? Sort of like that. So here's the end of the block and the river is right next to it. Before they did some clear cutting, this would be up to here in water.
So you were cut off by flood. Yeah.
They were. Like if you didn't have a boat, you couldn't go down. So people had to park all their cars up here to this end. And now that they've sort of fixed that somewhat, but it's been so droughty, not enough water, that it's weird. That's all I got to say.
We know drought out here. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Although we got a year's worth of rain last weekend in one day.
Yeah.
Right? It's then that's what I mean.
Exactly.
And when we have these climate related disasters, there are also, it's that kind of meanness that has become part of social discussion. Okay, but I prepared and that was stupid because it wasn't necessary because we didn't have any damage and it was just a storm. Except that And I'm not saying that for me because I did prepare and I don't think it was stupid. I'm in the same county as Palm Desert. They're still digging people out of their homes there. And we have people who live even further down in the agricultural areas where houses were literally just wiped away.
Mm.
And so if there is a climate related disaster, then there's also that need to be kind to those being hit by it, even if it didn't hit your home or your community, even if you're right next door.
Right. Right.
And there's a sense of greater abandonment by those who've experienced the loss when they see other people making light of whatever said disaster was.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, remember when the tree limb went through the church?
I do. That was just recently.
That was derechos. And anyway, I remember people, after they didn't just flip through the pictures, they looked at them and they said, "I'm so sorry, Deb. I didn't realize really what had happened and how it affected you." And you know, I get it. How many whatever the loss is for that person, maybe I wasn't as in tune to them. And I get it. So forgiveness of ignorance, not willful ignorance, but just they didn't know.
They don't
So
know how bad it is, right?
no, people don't. And so if they're not calling because maybe they genuinely didn't realize how bad, don't ruin a whole friendship over their ignorance, especially if they say, "I'm sorry."
If you can explain what's happened better for someone who has no firsthand knowledge of what a derecho can do, no firsthand knowledge of what it's like to live through a tornado night, right?
Huh?
I was in Florida. Those were terrifying for me. I
Right.
don't like
Right.
tornado nights. You can't tell what's coming. You can only hear the damage happening. Right?
And Jill, you're you don't know hurricanes by you. That is not something that you have. Earthquakes,
And we
yes,
had
but
one of those too at the same time.
you had a hurricane.
We did.
That's
Webster
what
said
we
we have a new
call it.
word. But I have knowledge of hurricanes because I lived through them when I lived in Florida.
Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So I have been through hurricanes, and my grandparents went through hurricanes, and my dad. I know the lessons from hurricanes. And while we had tropical storm sounds mild. Tropical storms are not mild. And so trying to help people understand that you're right, you might get all prepared and then nothing goes wrong. But if you don't get all prepared, then your lack of preparation could actually hurt your neighbor if you didn't put that lawn furniture away and it flew through their wall.
Absolutely. Or
You
went
have
through a
to you
window.
have to prepare ahead of time. And out here
Mhm.
we need to have preparation done anyway because we do have earthquakes. And we've
Yeah.
been told quite clearly by the federal government and the state government, if there is a major earthquake, we have to be able to survive for 3 days on our own.
Oh,
Without power, without water, without
that's
any assistance, plan on 3 days without help
that's right.
because they need time to stage.
Oh. So what else is on your heart, Jill?
I've been surrounded by all of this grief this week from people who are facing loss because of the weather and the climate. I am hearing from people all over the place who are experiencing a variety of different losses, as well as losses of confidence in friendships, losses in of places that they loved
Mm-hmm.
that will never be the same again. And with my folks who haven't had that, these very visible losses have re-triggered losses for them, even if it's not related to something in the weather or a fire or whatever. The
That's right.
immensity of the loss, the seeing parents searching for children, the seeing adult children grieving their parents.
Mm-hmm.
It has brought those things back to life. I'm not going to say it's triggered because that's an overused term, but it's brought that sense of loss back for them. And they're needing to figure out how to grapple with that while still being supportive of those who are having the immediate loss right now, which is, for them, it's hard.
You know, one of the things I like to discuss here is I often talk, and you probably use this metaphor too, the iceberg.
Yep.
So even though, let's say, midway down that iceberg, not to the very bottom, but midway, you really have been through and have less grieving moments of, say, the loss of a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But then you read about people searching for their parents, and all of a sudden, I know lightning strikes down, but this lightning strikes up.
It
And
does.
all of a sudden it comes up, and you're that overwhelm once again of parent, searching for a parent. And I remember when my mom died, or my dad died, or my auntie who took care of me, or my grandma, whoever, they died. And now you're like identifying with the people that have most recently are crying out for their family members.
Right. And it's also engendering a lot of survivor's guilt, because folks who lost parents in the way you and I did with an illness where we knew it was coming, we didn't have to go searching. We didn't have to imagine how they died. We didn't have to do that. And that's part of the problem with a traumatic loss is it's generally unwitnessed. You're not part of it. You're not expecting it. And there's that search for what really was it like for them. You know, we all want to believe that we're just going to go to sleep. And those folks clearly didn't. So there's that sense for those folks as well. And those of us who had peaceful deaths, for some folks, that's causing some guilt as well, that they were feeling sad and talking about it, 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago, about how hard it was losing their parent, but their parent didn't die that way.
That's right.
Right? And we've also got people who've lost pets, and they're seeing the images of pets and hearing about people searching for pets in a variety of places, not just Lahaina. There have been floods recently, and there have been some other things, and pets have been lost. And that can cause more pain for some people than people.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. For those of our listening audience, and I experienced that, right? My dad died. I mean, I saw him go out the door. He died at a bar mitzvah in 1970. He went exactly how he wanted. But I never saw my dad after he walked out the door, because I wasn't allowed to even see I could see the coffin, but it was closed. And
so for you, it was an unwitnessed death.
It was unwitnessed, and I used to dream about only my dad's head sticking up through this. It was our laundry chute, and that there was some veil over him, because my brother used to get down in the laundry chute that was in a cabinet, and he would stick his head up through the floor, because he was a cute little 9-year-old, right? But I dreamt that, I opened the door and there was my dad just with his head, but with a veil. And I think of the families whose child has died unexpectedly, and or sibling that has died unexpectedly, and you never get to see the body again,
Mm-hmm.
and it plays with your mind.
It
However,
does.
it doesn't mean, like someone like me, look at this is why I'm good at what I do.
Because you can talk about it, which is what makes the difference. I just taught a class for a big counseling program in New York yesterday at 7 in the morning. And that's a miracle by itself, folks. And it was about helping folks who've had traumatic sudden loss.
Mm-hmm.
And when I teach, I bring in the current research, and there's some brand new research because we've had a lot of sudden losses recently to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And what is clear is if we help folks tell their story, if we help them work through the what ifs, if we help them go from I'm thinking about what could be happening now if they were still alive versus I'm thinking about what opportunities I have, even though I've lost them, that I wouldn't have had with them here. If we can help folks move to that, then the trauma doesn't stick and prolonged grief disorder doesn't occur. But it's a lot of work to get from A to B.
So I'd like to mention back to what I was saying, what happens if there's no words?
Right.
And you talked about journaling. I want to talk about someone that I've taken a workshop with long ago that's very good. Her name is Pragito Dove. And Pragito, she developed Laughter and Tears program, which was sort of based on something else. But basically, when there's no words, you can listen to music that can bring up sadness, and you can
And release it.
release it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can do hard laughter, fake laughter. Sort of like, I remember that scene with Wheezy in
In the
Steel
cemetery.
in the
Yes.
cemeteries. Hit her. So I'm not advocating violence, but I am advocating creating the outlandish so that you might find it funny, like extremes. I use that a lot in grief coaching. Well, at least you didn't do that, and I'll
Right.
make up some bizarre UFO story or something, or at the very least, and then I'll minimize something to its tiniest fraction. And so that would be funny. And then maybe you'll be like many of my friends, Helen, who's been on our program before, art therapy. Maybe you'll draw something that will get it out of you.
Or maybe you'll do movement and connect with where it sits in your body and let you stretch it out and hold it and let it go. There's lots of polyvagal theory that helps with that as well.
That's right. And this is not the time to go on a diet. Perhaps you're going to stuff your feelings within reason, not to make you sick. Most people
don't have a heart attack. Don't do that.
No. Potato chips.
No, you can't have sodium. Leave it alone.
Potato chips are my crack. Let me just say that. And so if I decide to go through that, believe me, I won't be eating them again. But if you need that pint of Haagen-Dazs, or someone just put chocolate Fannie Mae mint meltaways, and I know they're going through cancer treatment and stuff. If that's what you need, eat the bag. You know?
Did you see that Hormel sent 3 truckloads of Spam to Maui?
Yes. And that's
because that is a traditional comfort food.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Wasn't that beautiful? They
It
just,
was.
yes.
Showed up. Here it is. Spam has arrived.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what they're used to, you know,
Yes. Because
here.
of the military being there. But yes, it is what they're used to. It is a
That's what
comfort food, and Spam musubi is a thing.
that,
And I
oh my
happen to love
God.
it and can't eat it anymore, but I do love it.
Go to the Spam Museum. You'll see all the dishes made out of Spam. I,
Right? It's
so
comfort food, and you can do that within reason.
also the opposite, you might not want to eat it all.
Right.
And what I say is if you can't eat, drink, not alcohol,
Not
but
alcohol.
to increase
Hydrate.
your hydrate however you can. Make
I've
sure you're getting some sugar, such as ginger ale,
Or
right?
there's also liquid IV and that kind of stuff that you can stick in your
Yes.
water bottle, and it'll give you lots
Yes.
of stuff. I've actually, now to think about it, what I've been doing this week in between sessions, because they have been hard sessions this week. Folks, grief therapists do actually hear what you're saying, and we try not to absorb it, but we do have to cope with it too. And so
Yes.
to be able to be fresh for the next person and to absorb where they are, I have now cleaned the backyard because the storm required me to. And now I have 6 new tomato plants, and I have some other flowers. And I was out digging in the garden early this morning because it's good. It's good to be outside. It's good to get the fresh air before it's too hot. And it's good to dig in the dirt. And I am very careful not to use gloves because we know from the research that putting your hands in the dirt actually helps our brains when we are stressed.
Absolutely. And
So Stacy's coming home to a whole new garden on the patio.
wow. Wow. I
Right?
get, whether or not you had the garden or not, Stacy will just be glad to come home.
Yes, she will. Yeah.
Something else, an article I also just researched or came across my way is about happiness and the people. And you wouldn't think I'm going to talk about happiness and grief,
You
but I
should.
am. Happy from this Happiness Institute. There was this big over the span of many years, and there was actually a place at Harvard called, oops, wrong piece of paper, but anyway, it was this at Harvard, this Happiness Institute. And what they found, you find pleasure and feel good in simple routines. And these simple routines, such as having coffee, if you're a coffee drinker in the morning or
There we
afternoon,
go.
that's right. So a simple routine of just having those first sips of coffee, that it's like your resilience builds during the day. Are you happy? No, but it's just a moment. Maybe the next thing is you feed your animal, and that is a routine that you do, and that helps.
It settles
Perhaps
your brain and
it
allows your brain to
does.
reorganize around the shift in your world. So
Mm-hmm.
it's get the dishes done, make your bed, pick up the dirty clothes, have the coffee, right? Get a calendar out to track what you need to do because your brain's not going to work well. And put some routines into place so you know what's coming and you've got some sense of there's order to the world again.
I read another article that talked about the psychiatrist said to the client who had this giant loss and had showed up after so many months. And he said, "What did you like to do before all this happened? What gave you pleasure?" And she said, "Well, I'm not going to do it." He said, "I didn't ask that. What was it?" And he kept, every time she make a comment the other way, he'd say, "What is it?" "I like to dance." And he said, "Until I see you next time, dance every day. Can you do that?" And she said, "Well, no, I can't," because he said, actually, he didn't say, "Can you?" He said, "Dance every day." And then she said, "But I don't think I can get enough." He says, "I didn't discuss that. I just said, do that every day." And talked about the first day, she barely could get up, right?
Right.
It messed with her mind. The second day, she said, it wasn't dancing, it was jerking my body.
Mhm.
And then the next day, and then finally by about the fifth day, she had a release. So if you're looking for that immediate release, I highly doubt it is possible that you'll have it. But within a few days or a week, you'll have the release that you need to
Play
take
the
it out.
music, sing the songs, do the dance.
That's
Right?
right. That's right.
Right
So,
after my mom died, we had a bee on the patio. And probably a couple days later, and all the sisters were around, and the grandkids were around, and a couple of friends were over. And someone started singing the Bumblebee song. You know the one? I'm smashing up the baby bumblebee. Yeah, Bumblebee. And by the time we got done, everyone was singing and laughing. The sadness had lifted. We were connected to a memory. We were connected to each other, and we could laugh again. And that's the kind of thing that movement and music and laughter will do for someone in grief.
That's
It's a really
exactly.
gross song, by the way, but it
Yeah,
really
yeah,
was
yeah.
funny at the moment. Yeah, smash
Oh,
the bumblebee. Don't even go there.
yes.
Yes.
Right, right.
Mhm.
So,
All
well,
right. So it is time. We shall see everyone next week.
yes.
You're going to have a good weekend in the heat in Illinois.
I am leaving on Sunday to fly a very quick trip to Denver, appear in court to support families. And
Nice.
yeah, that's what I'm doing. And then I'll be back next Thursday in my house in the morning.
And
So
we'll see you from there on Friday.
you will. And
Yeah.
thank you, everybody, for whenever you choose to listen on our podcast and this. And, just have a week. I'm not saying have a great week. I'm not saying, whatever. Just
Take care of yourself. Put your hands in the dirt. Get some sun.
wrap
And
your hand
breathe
together.
inside. And
Yeah.
breathe.
Breathing is a routine that we do every day.
I had 45 therapists doing this yesterday morning.
That's perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.